Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Blizzard Watch podcast. I am Matt. I am the host. With me are my amazing co-hosts, Liz Harper and Joe Perez. And guys, is everything happening at once?
Yeah.
It feels like time is a rubber band that's been stretched way out, and then someone let it go, and now everything is happening right now, all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some of the stuff. The War Within pre-patch finally came out after like a day and a half of them trying to get it to happen.
It was like a day. It went live about midnight Eastern time, which is to say, that's the time I should probably be going to bed, but don't. So, it did get out within a single day, but maintenance was extended like 3 or 4 times.
And to the point where they actually gave people like a day of free game time?
Yeah.
North
Everyone
American servers,
on North American realms, you will be getting 1 extra day of game time because you did lose 1 day of playing. So, it's kind of balanced out.
This is, to me, like, I felt like I was in 2005 when I read that. Like, I seriously felt like, what? They did that. I remember they did that when Blackwing Lair came out. Because Blackwing Lair was so buggy when it came out that servers and so many people trying to play it that servers were literally screaming and crying.
Back in vanilla, they used to do that pretty frequently too, when there was extended maintenances. You routinely would log into your account to see them add like a day, 2-3 days of time to your account.
Yeah, so it felt very nostalgic. In a way, it was more nostalgic for me than WoW Classic has ever been. I was like, oh wow, yeah, I remember this. Used to do this all the time. But since it's July 30th, as we're recording this, if you're listening to us live, it's July 30th. If you're listening to it recorded, it could be July 31st. It could be August 1st. It could be August 2nd. The future continues going onward. But the Radiant Echoes event is now out since we're 1 week after the launch. I have not gotten to see it yet because I've been busy playing, well, quite frankly, Mass Effect and sometimes Diablo. So, Liz, Joe, somebody tell me about the Radiant Echoes so I can decide whether or not it's worth getting gear for my character on it.
I'll let Liz talk about it.
Well, Radiant Echoes, you are basically, it's an Azerothian nightmare. Azeroth is having memories spawning in various zones throughout Azeroth. Yeah, that's a word. And every 90 minutes, a new Radiant Echoes event will begin. And there's kind of a little event where you do a lot of small vignettes, and, and it ends with killing a boss, killing a kind of classic World of Warcraft boss. It's either Onyxia in Dustwall Marsh, or Ragnaros in Searing Gorge, or, remembering things, or the Lich King in Dragonblight. So, you go and you do the event, you do your things, you kill the boss, and you will receive a currency for doing this because, of course, it's a new event. It's gotta have a new currency. It's so exciting. I know that's what we were all asking for, was a new currency in this game.
Yeah, constantly. Every time there's a patch of any sort, I need new currency immediately.
I mean, that's great because that's how patches work in this game.
Yes, and it is my dream to just, now we have to collect sparkling buttholes.
By killing these bosses, you get residual memories, and with residual memories, you can, of course, buy exciting new rewards, because that's why we're all here, folks. There are a couple of mounts, a Griffin mount and a Wind Rider. These are kind of classic-looking mounts, but they are ghostly. There are some pets that are themed after kind of the zone that you get them in. And there is a lot of gear. You can pick up item level 480 gear, upgraded, which is upgradable, I believe, to 502. And for every armor class, every slot, and it kind of has the appearance of Argus armor. It's sort of a mimic from the Argus questing armor, except it's kind of voidy, because that's our theme. Yes. That's our theme, is the void. So you can collect this armor for a quite a bit of currency. It's
I'm looking
a lot of currency, folks.
The residual memories is the name of the currency, and if you want to buy everything that's available, mounts, gear, everything, you will need 335,025 residual memories.
Now, let's put that into context. You have... So the Radiant Echoes events rotate through 3 zones. Each zone has a weekly quest, which rewards 1,500 residual memories, and you get an additional 500 residual memories for killing the boss in that event. Which means you can get a total of 6,000 memories per for these weekly quests. You can continue killing the boss for those extra 500. And when the event itself is not up, you can go to the current zone and just grind mobs that'll drop a handful of residual memories each. But that is a pretty significant grind. And the biggest problem I have with the event, after having done a couple of them this afternoon, is that, so it's on this 90-minute spawn timer, and that sounds really generous. You go to Dalaran, and you go to the portal room in the Chamber of the Guardian, and there's a portal to each of these zones, so they're very easy to get to. It's this is probably one of the lowest hassle events we've had, because there's no travel time. Park yourself in Dalaran, and you can easily get to this event. Now, the problem is, it spawns every 90 minutes, and when it spawns, the event portion starts, where you go and do this series of scenario-like activities, and when you complete them, you fight the boss. Every 90 minutes, that happens in one of the 3 zones. So the problem is, it happens very quickly. This event can be completed in 5 minutes. If a group of players goes in and really attacks it, maybe 5 minutes, and then the event is over. It does not come back until the next one spawns in 90 minutes. After that event is over, and that event is where you get most of your currency and most of your rewards, there's just some memories hanging out that you can kill. It's just kind of trash mobs around the zone that you can kill and get a little bit of extra currency. But it's really those events, and those events are on not a long spawn timer, but not a short spawn timer. And if you aren't there right at the beginning, you are not going to see that event. So it's a pretty tight timer. One thing to be aware of in this is that you can get some of this gear just from drops. Of course, those drops are only from participating in that initial event. So if you miss the event, you're only collecting currency. And also in future weeks, the event timer is going to get shorter. So we're doing 2 weeks, I believe, at a 90-minute timer. The following week, it'll be on a 1-hour timer. And then the last week of the event, right up till the patch, it's on a 30-minute timer. So this is going to go faster and make it easier to collect this. But I still feel like this is a whole lot of currency to grind in a really short amount of time. If you want all of the collectibles, even if you just want to gear up your alts, if you have a bunch of alts that you've been leveling in Remus, that you've been leveling since the big experience nerf that came with with the pre-patch, that's a lot. That's a lot of currency to grind, and after playing the event, I am not super enthusiastic about it. I'm gonna keep doing it because I've got alts to gear up, but I'm not excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds very much like it's an attempt to do the same kind of thing they've done before, like the Legion invasions or what they did before Dragonflight. It sounds a lot like what they did before Dragonflight.
Yeah, these events have become, they're kind of routine, you know?
But the thing is that huge cost, that gigantic amount of memories you need, and the limited amount you can get, even with the sped up thing, that's like, it almost feels like I'm like, do I really want to do this? That's
because even if you're just going in there to gear up your alts, it's like, okay, head, leg, and chest pieces cost 5,000 residual memories. So if you're just doing the weekly stuff, you can buy one of those. Then shoulders, hands, waist, feet, 3,500 each.
And
each. The back, wrist, 2,000 each. So it
pointed out
adds up really quickly.
That these are 480 pieces that can upgrade to 502.
I believe the 502 is correct.
The bosses that you fight drop 493 gear?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
Do you know what that upgrades to? Does that upgrade at all? Is it upgradable?
It is upgradable. I am not sure what it upgrades to. It's higher.
Yeah,
maybe 515?
So it's like maybe you shouldn't even bother spending the currency for a week or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about that is that the boss drops are bind and pick up. These 480 pieces.
Oh, those are
account bound. Those are warband bound, so you can pass them around however you want. One other note that's probably important is that you can do this on your ults. I think you only have to be level 10 to participate in this event. When I did my first event, I did it with my monk who was level 64. I got 2 levels doing that first event. So this could be a really excellent way to finish up your levels and collect a little gear as you go.
Cool. All right. I think that pretty much covers everything we need to talk about that. I do want to mention the next thing that you have here that I did not notice, and I'm pretty excited about it. The Warband banks are finally live. They went live with today's maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that means basically you now don't need to ever have a bank ult. You don't need to you don't have to have a character standing in, say, Thunder Bluff, mailing stuff to everybody. You can just, put it in your war bank and then take it out of your war bank. Calling it war bank sounds like it's, Daddy Warbanks or something.
I mean, Blizzard started out by calling it Warband Bank.
Yeah.
But in their latest communications, they've shortened it to Warbank. So
everyone was calling it Warbank.
Yeah, I know.
But I think that's a pretty good change. I'm going to move on to this one, though, because this is one I hadn't seen, and I liked Joe's response on it, so I want to see what he says. Plus, I want to drink some soda, and if Joe talks more, I can drink more soda. So there's an announcement today. Blizzard, put out a post letting us know that Hearthstone's definitely not dying. It's not dying. Still going on. There's more Hearthstone. Joe, since you're the one who was talking about how it's something we should talk about on the show, what do you think of this?
Well, it was more for me to get Liz to talk about it, but nothing makes me feel more confident that a game's not dying than a dev telling me that the game's not dying. And if you can't tell the sarcasm on that, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
You're doing air quotes, guys.
Yeah, it's not how you really build confidence that a game isn't going away or isn't slowly winding down. They did the same thing with Heroes of the Storm, if you remember correctly. And then it was 2 months later, we were told it was being put in maintenance mode. So it's I don't know. So I'm going to let Liz talk about it since she actually plays Hearthstone.
So, one of the reasons they made this post is to talk about the future of the game, which is that they are focusing on 3 game modes. We joke a lot that Hearthstone is a dozen games in a trench coat, and it really is. There's a lot of different game modes, and Hearthstone has a bad habit of releasing something, and it can be really cool or it can be really terrible, and then 6 months later, it's gone. So, what they have said is they plan to focus on constructed mode, battlegrounds, and arena. And that's their core focus on the game. They say these are the most popular types of gameplay, which frankly surprises me. I did not realize that arena was that popular of a game mode. But in saying that they're focusing on these, it's kind of an implication that the rest, that, other game modes, maybe game modes we would have hoped would get developed more, are kind of dead. We have single player modes, which I think were always fantastic in Hearthstone. Haven't had one of those in a long time. Doesn't sound like we're getting any more. We had Mercenaries, which I had some complaints about, but was an interesting new take on the card game format. That they killed off. It felt like they killed it off relatively quickly for how much development that was clearly put into. And also Twist, which is a recently added game mode that is kind of on a constructed format where it's a season, and each season has a different kind of effect. The fact that they didn't mention Twist in here makes me think Twist is about to die. That we are not going to see more Twist seasons. Yeah. So this isn't... Go.
Sorry, I had a cough there. So I find a lot of this stuff interesting, and the timing's pretty interesting as well. Mm-hmm. This is something that I was going to throw in the notes, and unfortunately it was very hot and I lost track of time because that's the thing that happens when I get overheated. Blizzard has been losing ground in a couple games recently, one of which is Hearthstone, not just because of Hearthstone, sort of like you said, being 8 million games in a trench coat, because it very much is that. It sort of lost its core focus. It's been losing ground to games like Marvel's Snap, made by, alumni of Hearthstone. So it's a card game that's sort of taken over. It's really pushing into mainstream media, has a ton of tie-ins. and has a very core gameplay loop that is satisfying. I mean, hell, we had Ben Bruin on the show before and he talked about it, and I still play it, and I know a lot of people do, and I'd rather play that than Hearthstone any day now. And part of that is because the core satisfying loop of Hearthstone for me has been gone for a while. So hearing them refocus up on it makes sense, because they have to sort of combat against that sort of losing that market share. They're not the only game in town anymore, so to speak. The other game, and I don't want to change gears completely, but it's relevant here, is Overwatch. Overwatch 2 is losing ground to all the other hero shooters that are coming out. There's a Star Wars hero shooter coming out. Discord's got their own from their game studio that's coming out, which,
Marvel's got one.
That's where I was going with this. Marvel Rivals literally just had their closed beta weekend, and it has been running nonstop for the people in it. And from everything I hear, it's everything that made Overwatch 1 fun, just with a Marvel skin. And so they're losing ground there too. So I think you're going to see a lot more attention given to these games like Hearthstone and probably Overwatch 2 in the coming year, because I think we're a little late in the year for them to really start pumping it out now, to compete with the games that are sort of eating their market share, but also to try to reinvigorate them by looking at what their core value is. Because what's the one thing, I know I'm the only one here that really plays Overwatch 2, but for all the people that play Overwatch, the game hasn't been satisfying for a lot of people for a while. So that, how do you make it satisfying again? What do you do? How do you go back and capture what made Overwatch 1 so much fun? Especially when something that seems to be doing what Overwatch did, but, better, I guess, or more relevant now, is going to be coming out in a few months. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with this.
So they wrapped up this post by specifically saying Hearthstone is here to stay. And that's actually not something I had been concerned about until they wrote this post. I had not even considered that Hearthstone may not be here to stay.
I mean, they've been pumping out expansions for on a routine.
They put out expansions like clockwork, 3 expansions a year, 3 battleground seasons a year, 3 mini sets a year, clockwork. And each of those things is generating money. So the fact that they had to show up and write this post saying that Hearthstone is here to stay actually worries me. I was not worried before, but now I'm worried. What's going on here? You make some great points, Joe. I guess Hearthstone hasn't been innovating much, except in game modes that it puts out and immediately kills.
And that's the thing, it doesn't necessarily, and I think this is sort of the area where I think a lot of them sort of lose track. A game doesn't have to innovate to be good. It just has to continually either improve its core value to keep up with what's going on, or give you reasons to keep playing. I will say, a game that has survived the test of time, contrary to what people thought it was going to do, was League of Legends, right? League of Legends was started off as a Defense of the Ancients clone, way back when, that was spun off from another company that nobody thought was ever going to be a thing. And now it's the flagship game for one of the largest, game developers in America, really, as far as their studio imprint goes. But it doesn't really break anything. It does offer fun game modes every now and then, but they stuck to their core value and continue to make their core value better. Summoner's Rift has gone through many revisions, but each revision has been an attempt to make the core gameplay better to entice players to play more. They looked at it and said, oh, it's really hard to understand what items to build. So they made it so that when you log in, you can set what type of role you want, and it'll make suggestions either based off of, if you know what you're doing, what you want to do, or what the most common items for that role is, so that you don't have to really think about it. You can just go back and purchase, oh, this looks like it'd be interesting. And it even gives you icons okay, are you facing against these champions? Okay, cool. These items are traditionally pretty good against these champions. You might want to consider them. So it lowered the barrier to entry there. Creating your talent system, or what they call the rune system, in there can be daunting to new players. So instead of having it where you have to pick one of your own, they have presets where you can literally go, oh, okay, well, this sounds like what I want to do. I want to be more tanky. I'm going to pick this one. Or I want to be more supporty. I'm going to pick this one. Or I want to melt faces. I'm going to pick this one. And it took that barrier to entry out. And that's how it's kept itself relevant. Hearthstone hasn't done anything like that to really either entice new players in a while or to reinvigorate its core loop. Neither has Overwatch. Like, one of the things that we complained about the most, and I'm sorry I'm talking a lot, but I've been thinking about this in particular for like a week. Overwatch, one of the things we were most excited about was what? The PvE mode. It would have been something that would have reinvigorated at least interest for a large portion of people that played the first game in the second game. And then that's just gone. And because that's just gone, what other value it has? Here's another champ. Here's another hero. Here's another map. Now, they're starting to look at that stuff again. They've redone how they distribute heroes. They've looked at their shop a little bit more to make sure that it's still fairly predatory. I'll call a spade, but it's not as bad as it was. And they're looking at how rewards work on like their battle pass tracks and things like that. But they're actually trying to look at it, but they haven't really done that since the game came out. And I don't know if it's too little too late or if it'll be enough when there's other games already beating down the door saying, hey, we do that already better. And we have it with IPs that you already know, like, you know, Star Wars, which is a hard one to compete against. Or, hey, do you want to run around as Spider-Man and punch people? Do you want to run as Venom and eat people? Do you want to be Iron Man and just blow people out of the sky? Here you go. When
I watched the video for it, it's not even Spider-Man. It's an alternate Spider-Man in a mech suit. So it's like, you want to be Diva, but Spider-Man?
That's Penny Parker. She's a separate character. Spider-Man is in there as well, as is Venom.
Might be, but I just remember seeing her and thinking, yeah. So it's like, do you want to be Diva, but also Spider-Man? Mm-hmm. You can do that here. And I'm like, oh my God. Like you guys, it's like just printing money, huh?
But I mean, and again, like in order to stay relevant, Blizzard's going to have to look at their core gameplay and what will make players interested to play our stuff again. And like, we haven't
Heroes of the Storm.
Heroes of the Storm is a really good example about that. That game was fantastic, right? Heroes of the Storm was absolutely amazing. It was a great game. It did something different in the MOBA genre. It had a pretty decent player base, but then they did nothing with it. And they started doing too little too late by introducing their own characters, their own heroes, their own Nexus characters, way too late to like really start to draw people in. Like, honestly, that should have been there from the very beginning. And they did all the things that League of Legends did before League of Legends did it. They simplified how you handle your heroes. They eliminated the shop so you don't have to worry about it. Everything was done through talents, and it was done through, you know, here are 3 choices, pick one. It wasn't, this big, extensive, exhaustive, like, talent tree. It was really enjoyable. And then they just did nothing with it. And then, well, it exists still? Question mark? Because I know it does, but it's like most of the players that have I can hear Corey screaming like at the top of those lungs somewhere as he falls to his knees screaming, you know, Heroes of the Storm. But
curse you, Perez!
Outside of a really dedicated few, nobody talks about it anymore and hasn't been relevant. Like, and I'm sorry, I'll stop talking here in a second, but like going back to Overwatch, one of the things that got us excited about the first game, comics. We had those comics that were released all the time. We had those animated short
videos. Those were amazing.
Yeah.
That absolutely drew you in. When's the last time we had anything like that for that game?
The closest we've gotten was the Transformers one, which still isn't really that good. It doesn't have a story of any kind. It
wasn't even a story. It was just, here are some really rad skins. The same thing they did with the Cowboy Bebop one. And don't get me wrong, the tie-ins are fine. Having tie-in skins in a game like this, I enjoy it. I'm a sucker for them. So, like, I get it. But, like, those trailers, while cool, do nothing. There's no substance to them. There's no purpose to them.
I'm going to actually drag us back to Hearthstone for a second here, because I think there's a point to be made about how Hearthstone's doing something similar. I think that the thing that really grabbed people's attention about Hearthstone, I mean, gameplay and all that stuff, yeah, absolutely. But the thing that really grabbed people's attention was how Hearthstone was like a look at Warcraft through a completely different lens. And it had expansions that were just out there. Like if you were a Warcraft fan and like, oh yeah, we've got, this one expansion that's in the Wildwood. And now we've got this one expansion that's like it's a pulp noir Las Vegas story in Gadgetzan with gangs. And then it kept doing that, like cool
and
outward, like I want to say outtakes. That's not quite what I'm thinking of. It was kind of like what ifs of Warcraft. Like the one where everybody gets to be like the Lich King, or the one where there's a group of villains who are stealing Dalaran and putting rockets on it. What are they doing that for?
Yeah.
And
because
but because they were doing that was the thing that got people engaged and brought in people. People would come into Hearthstone not even caring that much about the gameplay. They just wanted to do the cool thing that let them experience. Like I remember the Liz had talked before about the single player stuff they were doing. The anti-Lich King dungeon one, when you were fighting the Lich King.
Great. It was great.
It was great. It was also a real departure. But it used all the mechanics. It didn't. Yeah. It's like in later periods they would introduce something like that, but it would be like Mercenaries mode, where it's a completely different game.
Yeah, as opposed to like what you're talking about, drew people in, introduced them to the game because it gave them a reason to try it, use the mechanics of the game, so then people would stick around and try out the rest of the game, right? Like it fed into itself via its own hype. When's the last time that's happened?
Like the Hearthstone just released a new expansion, and the expansion is a bunch of characters you were not familiar with go on a beach vacation. That's it's Hearthstone. Now that you've said that, I do agree with you that it's kind of one of Hearthstone's strengths was that it would pull in a bunch of these classic characters and put them in cool, new, different situations or classic locations, things we were familiar with, and gave them a twist. But the past couple of expansions haven't really done that. They've been more self-referential, maybe. I mean, these are things set in kind of the Hearthstone world.
Which you can do that, but you can do that when you're not already behind the 8 ball, right? When you're like, if they did it at the height of Hearthstone, would have been fine.
Yeah,
and they did to a certain extent, right? But now that they're doing it with, they're trying to play catch up. Why should people care about it? Give people a reason to care about it. And I don't know, like I feel like I'm being overly critical, and I apologize for those at home. It's something I've been really thinking about, because I remember pouring hours into Hearthstone, and I remember pouring like countless hours into Overwatch, and nothing has compelled me to really do the same again for those games. Like they're just out of sight, out of mind. And it's not because the games weren't fun, but they're not fun anymore because there's really I feel like I've gotten everything I need out of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So the thing about Hearthstone is that I actually think the game is very good right now.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's in decent shape from what I can tell. Oh, Liz, I'm going to tell you, yours is the last comment we're going to do on Hearthstone before we move into something else. So,
good point.
So you know.
The game is more accessible than it's ever been because there is this core set of cards that everyone has access to. So you don't need to go out there and collect every single card. You just have a collection of cards, and you can get more cards, but you start with this base collection of cards. Hearthstone has Battlegrounds, which is my favorite game mode. Battlegrounds, you just go into, you don't need to own anything. You do not need to pay a dime. You just go in and you build a board as you play the game. You don't need to spend money. Don't need to know about the game. You can just go in and start playing. So this is a great game. Battlegrounds is a totally free-to-play mode. And even Constructed is more accessible than it's ever been, with fewer requirements to grind out gold and buy packs. So the game's in a great place, but it just doesn't feel as exciting this year. So yeah. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I do hope that they manage to get that back. But I wanted to talk about this next one because it's one that I did not notice. And Liz caught it and put it on her roundup. So I think it's really important. There's basically a new union at Activision Blizzard, and it is the entire WoW development team. It's 500 or so people. They've started this is completely different than how they were trying to unionize before. We talked about this last week when we talked about how Ubisoft
this is full nuts to bolt, right? Like this is like top down.
if you work on the WoW dev team in any capacity, you are in this union. It's not everyone at Blizzard, but it is everyone on the WoW dev team.
It is a wall-to-wall union, so the entire World of Warcraft development team has kind of their collective bargaining power.
If you're a QA tester, if you're they're just, it's one of those things I think is really great for a lot of reasons. There's also an Activision Blizzard QA workers union that's based in Austin as well. It's called the Texas Blizzard QA United. That's also CWA. They're both CWA. We talked about Ubisoft unionizing last week, and I believe one of the things we said was what will we see next? And this week, boom, we have seen what we will see next. And Bethesda did a wall-to-wall union last week as well. Bethesda has a 200-employer wall-to-wall union. I think that's for Bethesda entire, because Bethesda is a much smaller development than it is. Blizzard's a much bigger developer in terms of its staff. There's not much to say about this other than the fact that it's part of the reason that these unions are happening is because Microsoft essentially made a deal to get support to buy Activision Blizzard. One of the things they put in there was that they were going to be hands off and neutral on the subject of unions. And I'm not saying they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. I'm saying they're doing it because they kind of have to. They made a deal. If they renege on that deal, that's not good for them if they ever want to try and go in front of, we want to buy this company now. Oh, well, now your regulatory agencies will be even worse for you. But regardless, this is something that I think I'm thinking back to the California. I forget the name of the part of California's government that sued the Activision Blizzard. The one.
It's their labor board.
California's labor board essentially sued Activision Blizzard over a lot of things. I mean, if you go and read our old posts on it, people were stealing people's breast milk. People were harassing people in all sorts of horrible ways. Multiple people who were near the top of Blizzard got summarily dismissed without much of a discussion. Names of characters in WoW had to be changed. It was a big deal. And one of the things that people pointed out at the time was that without a union, there wasn't a lot they could do collectively in situations like this. It was very easy for the corporate heads to divide and conquer. So this is a huge deal. I shut up so you can talk, Liz.
And in fact, they had, oh gosh, what are words? I mean, they had their employment agreements required them to go to arbitration with issues, which arbitration is basically a one-on-one with the company. Solve your issues with us individually, and that removed all collective power.
It also removed the legal capacity for you to pursue it, because if you chose arbitration, you basically were forfeiting your ability to seek legal recompense.
Yeah, a lot of contracts even specify that once you're in arbitration, you can't sue.
And so one thing I gotta note about this union, Microsoft has officially recognized all of these unions, but that's kind of step one with a union. Microsoft acknowledging the union and Microsoft negotiating terms in good faith are two very different things. We have seen unions in other industries that have spent years trying to negotiate contract terms for their workers, and the companies drag their feet. They aren't willing to agree or change any conditions. So the fact that they formed a union that's kind of step one here. And we'll have to see what Microsoft does with this from here.
Yeah, that is a really good point, especially the concept of, are they going to negotiate in good faith? Because there's a million ways a company can basically just be like, whoopsie, I guess, we're not going to talk about that. So yeah, there absolutely is a lot left to do. But this still is a big first step, because we have not seen, this is a lot of unionization for the video game industry. This is more than I think I've ever seen.
And certainly in such a short period of time. And certainly this is 3 unions within Microsoft popping up within a week of each other. That's a big deal. And
other big companies are doing it too. So it's not like they can be escaped. The unions are spreading, which is, again, pretty awesome. But again, Liz is correct. We really do need to see more. But we should talk about this, because we didn't talk about that. But I'm going to jump down to Diablo 4 first before we move on to other stuff. Right now, the current season of Diablo 4 is going to be ending on the 6th.
Yes.
And that's when the next season is starting, also on the 6th.
Yes.
first off, that season is going to be the season of the Infernal Hordes. I believe it's season 4, or is it season 5?
This is season 5. Season 4 is ending on August 6th, and season 5 will start on August 6th.
But we're going to have a developer chat on the 1st of August. So this Thursday, as we're recording it on Tuesday. So 2 days from now for us, but you might be listening to this on that day or the day after. But they're going to be doing a dev chat. One of the things they've been doing all along, their live chats. And they're going to do it on the 1st, which means it's like 5 days before the next season, which is, as Liz pointed out, that's not a lot of time.
It's pretty tight. And I mean, just today they released a blog post about the new season, and I gotta say, I'm not hyped. This is another game where I think the game is in a great place. I think Diablo 4 is 100% better than it was at launch. And yet,
absolutely. I agree.
I am really not excited about this season at all. It's great. I get to log on and level another character to 100. Why do I even do this?
There is something to be said about that really we do need to see what I think part of the problem is that they seem to have been a little conservative here because I think they're currently working on the expansion. Mm-hmm. And at this point, the expansion is what, 3 months away?
October.
Yeah. So August, September, October. It feels like this season is a caretaker season. Like we have to have a season, but we don't want to do anything that's going to impinge on the expansion we've got coming out. So yeah, there's no real story to this that I can see. I mean, I'm sure there's something, but it's very much like this, similar to this recent season. Season 4 didn't have a lot of story either. So.
Diablo 4 season 4 was kind of a non-season. Diablo 3 started doing seasons, and each season had a theme. Each season had different kind of gameplay mechanics. And originally Diablo 4 was also doing that, but Diablo 4 Season 4, it just added new game. It reworked loot, and it added some new gameplay elements to both the Eternal Realms and the Seasonal Realms. The Seasonal Realms had a very short quest where you help the Iron Wolves resist demons, but it was a pretty short quest. I mean, it was not adding significant narrative. It was very short. It was one and done. And so it felt like a season where it wasn't really important to play the season. And this season
very much
feels the same. It's most of the content that's getting added in this season is getting added to the base game. They're overhauling uniques. They are adding this Infernal Hordes event where you fight off waves of demons on a timer. They are adding the Fell Council fight where you fight off some of those corrupted Zakroom priests. And all of that's going to the Eternal Realms and the Seasonal Realms. The Seasonal Realms does seem to be getting one thing that I have noticed, which is the Hellbreach dungeons, which are going to be new and just for the Seasonal Realms. They kind of sound like mini Infernal Hordes. So I'm not sure what the reward structure is going to be there, where you'll actually want to do those instead of Infernal Hordes or instead of just all of the normal stuff you can do to earn rewards in the game. But there is going to be a seasonal quest line. But the seasonal quest lines have been very short, very perfunctory, not a lot going on there. So this is another season where it feels like you can get all of the fun of the season, everything the season has to offer without actually playing the season, which begs the question, why do you have a season?
Yeah, like the Eternal, there's like a seasonal quest that's just the Of Lambs and Wolves quest, but then there's another quest that's both season and Eternal Realms called the Eyes of the Enemy.
Which is, like, I believe that's for unlocking the Infernal Hordes event. So
pretty much, yeah. So it is, I don't know, it is one of those things where, like I said, it feels an awful lot like this, like last season felt like it was very much do you remember when Diablo 3 did we've upgraded the companions season, and it was like, yeah, great. Do we get a season? Just the companions. That's what season 4 felt like, although it was very much more important in terms of what it did, because season 4 brought upon like the whole, the equivalent of new loot now sort of thing, where everything was different on gear and enchantment type stuff, and all that stuff has changed. And I think it is a lot better now in terms of gear and acquisition of gear. But
yeah, and it's going to be better in Season 5, too, with these improvements to uniques. The Infernal Hordes event is going to be fun.
More legendaries.
Yeah, it's like I don't feel like am I even gonna play this season? The other thing is this is gonna be a real short season.
Yeah, because again,
the season ends the day the expansion starts and a new season will begin. So this is going to be like a 2-month season, breaking from kind of that 3-month seasonal cadence we've had. And it's a short season. It doesn't really have a seasonal theme. And I'm like, I hardly have time to play Diablo seasons as it is. Am I going to play this season? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either completely. Also, I do think that Uber Uniques, we should mention this, Uber Uniques are getting a name change. They're now going to be called Mythic Uniques, and now they're going to be purple.
And I think
when they drop, they're purple, and they shoot a purple light beam up into the sky. I'm actually happy about that. I know it sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm not. I think it's cool that they changed that.
I think the name change is a really good call, and I like it. And they're going to be more visible. So the purple thing, you're going to be able to see them more easily, which has always been a problem. You kind of get all of this loot on the ground, and it's like a blur of color and hard to distinguish. So that's a good change. It's a solid change.
I also like that it's actually a different color, even on your chart when you open it and look at the item, when you inspect it. Yeah. It's also purple there, which I think is good because it tells you immediately this is not just a unique or just a legendary. It's something else. This is, immediately tells you this is mythic. It is a different thing. It is better. I like that when there's a thing that makes that immediately apparent. I just think it's a good move. Mm-hmm. I actually at one point sharded a unique because I didn't know it was a unique. There was a unique that wasn't even an Uber unique yet, but it was like a Ramladny sword or something, and I just trashed it because I was like, well, I don't need a sword. And later on, I was like, oh wait a minute, that was unique. Oh well. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, but it does not really feel like the season journey is really involved in an actual story. Like the first two absolutely did. Actually, I'd say the first three did, really. Because you had the vampires, then you had the started off with vampires for the second one, right?
Yeah, the first one was the malignant hearts. Malignant hearts and curing the corruption.
Yeah, malignant hearts, then vampires, then Little Robot Friend. And I'm sorry, I know other people loved the vampire one, but for me, Little Robot Friend was the best season because I had a Little Robot Friend.
And also you got Zoltan Cool.
Yeah, Zoltan Cool's not really. Great. Did he actually show up?
No, he just. But you heard him talk a lot, which is he loves to talk. So
yeah, I do admit I miss our chats from Diablo 3, where he would like never lie. He would he'd be evil as possible, but he would never lie to you. I always liked that about it. But yeah, so that's what's going on in Diablo 4. New season's coming. We're gonna have a talk about it this week. We'll get to find out more about it, but we now have a post that pretty much tells us what we're gonna find out. So I'm actually I will give them credit for that. They have the posts now. Like they were doing that for a while. They were doing write-ups.
Yeah, and we're going to have patch notes later this week. So we may know a little more, but I do kind of feel like I was interested to see what was going to happen in this event, and now I kind of feel like I already know everything. But I am very glad to see it written down where I can read it and not be confused by potential mixed messages during their Q&A this week.
Speaking of finding out things and maybe not being as excited after you find them out, Cataclysm Classics Phase 2 is launching with the Zul'Aman and Zul'Gurub 5-player dungeons, or as I like to call them, oh man, I have to run ZA again a lot for friends to get their bear. Yay. So that's happening, and if you are one of those people who needs to get a bear, congratulations. You will be able to do so again, because the 5-player of those 2 dungeons is up. I've always missed the raid versions of those places. I don't know if the Zul'Aman raid is gone. I think you can actually still go to it. But Zul'Gurub is gone on live servers. It's just the 5-player. You can't go to the raid. And I miss that raid. So I feel bad for Cataclysm Classic players because you're not going to have Zul'Gurub anymore. You're going to have this other version with a less cool mount. I have the Zul'Gurub Tiger. I have the Zulian Tiger. And it's one of my favorite mounts. Even though it looks terrible compared to modern mounts, it's just still one of my favorite mounts. And the amount you can now get in Zul'Gurub 5 is just not as interesting to me. It's really weird because it looks exactly like the mount that Skeletor rides. If you've ever watched Masters of the Universe, it looks just like that. It's just it's a big purple cat. So yeah, okay. But that's just me. What do you guys think about it? Hello.
No opinion here. It exists.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp.
Okay, then we'll switch up to the next thing, which was World of Warcraft Classic Season of Discovery Phase 4, because that's getting multi-difficulty Molten Core with a secret boss fight. Have you guys looked at that at all?
Yes. I mean, that went live last week, and okay. Yeah, y'all know we've had this conversation before. Season of Discovery seems so cool, and I am excited about it in a way that I'm just not for Cataclysm Classic, because Season of Discovery has new things that we haven't seen before, and that's great. And they're all super weird. I love it, but I don't have time to play it. I mean, I'm talking here about how I barely have time to keep up with Diablo 4. I definitely don't have time to keep up with Season of Discovery.
Yeah, I'm kind of heartbroken about it. Joe, what do you think?
I don't really have an opinion on this one.
Okay, did you actually look at what the boss is, the secret boss for Molten Core?
I did.
At the highest difficulty? I'm going to, guys, if you don't want to know this, I'm going to try and treat this like a spoiler. Advance yourself a few minutes forward, because I'm talking about this, because I laughed so hard when I read this. The secret boss, the 11th boss of Molten Core at the highest difficulty level in Season of Discovery is literally the Molten Core.
Mm-hmm.
It is a big ball of molten rock. You kill Ragnaros, and Molten Core comes up out of Molten Core and starts attacking you. You are being attacked by the Molten Core. I feel like I'm saying Molten Core enough that it's lost all meaning. Like, what am I talking about? What is this? It's a big ball of molten stuff. Why is it attacking me? I have no idea. Like, what is it? What's its problem? I almost want to ask it. What's your problem, big ball of molten rock? And it is one of those things that, you don't think they could do much with this. It reminds me of the thing I really loved way back now when they had they were doing the Blackwing Lair fight on unique servers. I forget it was a specific season server, right? But the point was that they added in like new stuff to Blackwing Lair. They added new stuff to almost all the fights. And I remember thinking, wow, that's really cool. And I kind of feel like this is similar to that, except we just get it for we just get one new boss who's completely, I've never seen this guy before because he's a big ball of molten rock. I can't get over how much I want everything to do this. I want them to put Blackwing Lair in with all the changes from previous stuff and a new secret boss. Like, I don't know who the secret boss would be, but I want him to be there. I would love it. I would love it if, honestly, some boss like Meloriak from Blackrock Depths came in. Descent is what I was looking for. If Meloriak comes in and attacks after we've killed Nefarian, he's like, "No, my master!" And the attack, and you're like, "What, Meloriak? What are you doing here?" "Oh yeah, that place is a dungeon. You'll get there later." Anyway, attack. I would love it if they did that for everything. Like if they did that for Encourage, if there's a secret boss there. I don't know what the secret boss in Encourage would be. Like after a while, it's like maybe after Cthulhu.
Just keep adding old gods.
Yeah, they all
Cthulhu, and then you fight Yogg-Saron, and then you fight N'Zoth, and just kind of go down the list.
No, that's cool, but what about if it was just Yishraj? Yishraj shows up. He's never been in the game. Not the heart of Yishraj.
Okay, you're right. That would be cool.
He was like, "What's Yishraj doing here?" But yeah, so I don't know. I like Season of Discovery for the same reason you've mentioned. I think it's very cool that they keep doing new stuff, and we don't get that from a lot of games. And the point Joe made earlier about how you don't necessarily need to do new stuff is a really valid one, but sometimes I do want it. But that leads us, we're pretty much, we've got a few minutes to go here. I'd say about like 10 minutes. So we're going to try and get through some questions. I'm going to just read them. But first, if you've got a question for the show, you can email us at podcast@blizzardwatch.com with the subject line podcast of Blizzard Watch, so we know it's for this show. You can also go to our Discord. We've got 2 Discord servers for questions. One of them is the Q and Podcast Questions channel, and the other, that one's just for everybody. And the other is the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel for our Patreon followers, because our Patreon supporters, because we need that. It helps us do all this stuff. If we don't have Patreon, we wouldn't be here. So first up is going to be Tatsemi, I think. Yeah, because that's one's really quick. Question for the Blizzard Watch podcast. Wild speculation time. Are Warbands the goal, the foundation, or a work in progress towards something even bigger? I don't know. Joe?
It's really easy to speculate that it's going to be for something bigger, but the question is, what would it possibly lead to? And before anybody says it, I know exactly what Reddit and the forums and everybody else has been saying. Everybody thinks that this is the first step towards player housing. I hate to break it to you guys, but as much as I want player housing, until a day comes where this game is completely rebuilt from the ground up, we're not going to see it. And this is definitely not that first step there. Let me tell you. But what it is more just giving you the ability not only to just customize your play experience a little bit further, but give you more tools to have a more homogeneous or more even experience. The ability to transfer things without having to go through mail or a bank alt is huge. The idea that you can share gear easier between a core set of characters, because in truth, a lot of players generally have 2 or 3 characters that they play regularly, or at least like at alts. This is just the average, not saying it's everybody, but most people I know have at least 2 alts. And this just makes it easier for you to like essentially enjoy that time. So I don't know that it's building up to something bigger. I think it's just part of the continuous improvement of player experience in the game.
Liz?
I do think it's building to something, but I think what it's building to is essentially itself, if that makes sense. Because what we're seeing here with Warbands feels kind of like Warbands Phase 1. We are starting to see these features that make it easier for the game to recognize us as a player, not as a bunch of individual characters. But there's still a lot of places that this doesn't touch. We don't just have cross-account reputation now. Not everything is part of Warbands. There's a lot of things that were not upgraded to be included in the Warband. And while we are seeing cross-realm guilds now, so you can play with your friends regardless of which realm they're on, which is amazing. That just kills so many barriers to entry. We now have cross-realm guilds. We have cross-faction guilds. So many of your barriers to entry, your barriers to playing with your friends and having fun with the people you want to have fun with are gone. It's incredible. But also, there are some barriers that remain. For example, you can't do open world content with people of other factions, and I don't think you can do open world content with people on other realms. Maybe? Question mark. So there are still these barriers that cause problems where you can't play with your friends. I feel like Blizzard's current philosophy is building towards more of that, towards letting you play with your friends regardless of what you're playing, regardless of where you're playing, and letting you play as a player, not as a bunch of individual characters. We've taken big steps towards those things, but there are more steps to take. So I feel like this is a foundation, but I gotta go with Joe here. I don't think we're building towards player housing here. I think we're just building towards more and better features of the same sort.
Matt?
Okay. I honestly, like I said, I got nothing. I do not have an idea what this would be. The only thing I can say is I think that Warbands are Blizzard/WoW's attempt to do something that other games do with a different system. What comes to mind is the way that the Final Fantasy MMO has jobs that you can switch between. By making the Warband and allowing you to have your various alts get the reputation benefits from your original character, it's like by logging in a new character, you effectively have switch jobs. It's a different way to do that kind of thing without having one character constantly change what they are, which I think makes sense. I think it is a way to attempt to give people the same flexibility. As long as you keep your characters all leveled up, if you want to switch from your druid to your Death Knight, it's never been easier to do that. Your Death Knight's going to have the same reputation. Or at least they should, if Liz's ideas come in, because that's not currently a thing. But there's room for it to grow. But I think that's the attempt is to make it so that people feel like they can play what they want to play, not what they have to play. So that's the only thing I can think of about that. But our next question is, I'm going to go with this one from KTS Stories. Question for the Blizzard Watch podcast: with the promo tie-in comic coming out, I have to ask: are Transformers canon in Overwatch? Joe.
No.
Sure?
As much as I would want them to be, Hasbro is currently working on its own like extended universe, not just in the movies but in the comics as well. So I don't know that they would be turning that over to have Overwatch be part of it, because it's not an IP they control. However, having it be something where they license skins or events or things like that is completely different, as far as it being canon. But I don't think Transformers will ever be canonical in Overwatch, because it sort of takes away from the whole Omnic thing, which, you know, is sort of the foundation of the game and the world events that happen. So
now, in your fanfic, you can do anything you want.
That's true.
Like, I'll tell you right now, I have been so tempted over the years. Ever since Man of Steel came out and there was the big robot that was terraforming the Earth that made noises like a Reaper, I keep thinking, oh my God, if only I could edit video, I could totally cut these scenes of Superman fighting that thing and then have Reapers around it and make it look like Superman is fighting Reapers. I've wanted to do that ever since. And if I wrote fanfic, I would definitely write that fanfic. So I'm just saying, you can have the Transformers show up and like try to convince the Omnics to come join them on their crusade. You know, you can do that. Nothing can stop you. The next one's from Dai Kaiju. Question for Blizzard Watch: how much does this tempt you? And it's a Magic the Gathering Secret Lair Monty Python Holy Grail card.
Yeah.
So Joe, again, we're throwing stuff at Joe this week. I'm sorry.
That's fine. So, all right. I'm sorry. Minor rant time. I absolutely love Universes Beyond Magic the Gathering products. I think that they're super fun. They do some really cool things. And I've, in the past, really enjoyed Secret Lairs, which do things like celebrate specific artists. Like Dan Frazier, who is one of my favorite artists of all time, and how I learned how to paint non-metallic metal is one of my favorite Magic artists of all time as well. They did Secret Lairs for him, and I snapped those up immediately. The problem that we've moved into now, because we live in a post-Hasbro capitalist hellscape, is that Secret Lairs are no longer print to demand. They're limited print run, which means this sold out within like 2 hours to scalpers. So am I tempted? Yes, I would absolutely love to own this product. As a matter of fact, if you're familiar with the Not a Wolf Twitter account, they literally just did a Secret Lair for Not a Wolf, and I have that. I bought that immediately because I think it's absolutely hilarious, and I have a werewolf deck, and it immediately is replacing cards in there with like funny art because I think it's hilarious. I love the Secret Lair stuff. I have a Street Fighter 2 set of cards where like they're literally the characters from Street Fighter 2 as playable cards. I have the Stranger Things. I have the Walking Dead. I have they did an Army of Darkness one. I have that as well. I love the idea of this with alternate arts and alternate artists and things like that. But in the current climate of limited print run on all of these things, it's no longer attempting viability. If it was back to print on demand with like a cap, like we're going to cap it out at like, you know, X number and, you know, pass that order. It's just not feasible for us to have this in a reasonable amount of time. Would have no problem with it. I'd be all about this. Which sucks because I really, really wanted this. Particularly, there's a card in there called Dismember, which anybody who plays any black deck in any format has played with this card at some point. And what was the card in this particular set? You guessed it. It was the Knights. That was the Black Knight. And
it's
it was
Tis But a Scratch.
Tis But a Scratch, and it was literally that scene. Or the fact that one of the oldest jokes in Magic the Gathering is Prodigal Sorcerer. Prodigal Sorcerer is a blue creature that you tap and it deals 1 damage. We have called it Tim for 30 years at this point. Literally 30 years we've been calling it Tim because of Tim the Enchanter from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It's in here. It's here as a card. I want it, but I'm not going to be able to have it because it's a limited print run that's already been sold out. So those of us that work normal jobs, and when these go on sale at noon on a Monday, can't compete with the bots to go get it. Yeah, it sucks. So, I mean, Hasbro, if you're happening to listen to this, get your stuff together, man. Because, like, seriously, you want money? Stuff like this will make me give you money, but let me buy it.
Let me give you my money.
Like, this is the stuff that people want to buy. Like, stop being dumb about it. Sorry.
I'm going to also put in here really fast. There's 2 cards. One's called Birds of Paradise, and the other is also Birds of Paradise.
It's 1 card double-sided.
Yeah, I know. But the African swallow and the European swallow.
Yep.
It's not a question of where he grips it. It's a simple question of weight ratios. So,
or the bring out your dead. I'm getting better. No, you're not. You'll be stone dead in a moment. Like I love Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like, it is one of my favorite things because I am absolutely of that generation. I went to the movies with coconut shells and my friends, and we all dressed up and we showed up as the Knights of the Round and the Squires, like showing up to the theater. Nobody's like, it was absolutely amazing when they did the like, I forgot what it was, like it was the early 2000s. They did the anniversary thing. I love that stuff. This is stuff I would love. They did a Princess Bride Secret Lair not too long ago too, which was absolutely phenomenal. But again, the whole print to demand versus print to short run, it's sad. Sorry.
That's fine.
My rant is over.
Got Joe to rant yet again. I'm going to throw in this last one because we got this far. We might as well do it. Corn. You remember, guys? Remember Corn? Hi, y'all. So it occurs to me today that we are never, ever getting Warcraft 4. In fact, I'm not even sure we're ever going to see another RTS from Blizzard. Even with the Microsoft acquisition, I can't say I see any evidence for RTS love from Blizzard. So do you guys think we'll get a new Warcraft RTS game or a StarCraft RTS or any RTS? Like, would a Diablo RTS even be a good idea? Anyway, I'm sad now, so I'm just going to go watch compilations of Godzilla yelling at things.
One, yeah, that's a good compilation. Two, I don't know, man. Like, Microsoft has access to a ton of RTS games, right? Like, it's got the Age of Empires, it's got the Age of Mythology and all that other stuff. It's got Halo Wars, it's got a few, like, there's a number of them. But we talked about this before. The RTS genre is ripe for a revival, and this would be a really good opportunity. And nothing says you can't do a Warcraft 1. You could do Caverns of Time RTS style strategy games where none of it is canonically fun. Yeah, I think it would be fun, but none of it has to be canonically relevant anymore, right? It just has to be a fun game. They could easily do that. We have more factions than ever now. It doesn't necessarily just have to be like it was before, where we had, orcs and night elves and undead and then humans. You could literally have any of the factions, any of the sub factions within those factions. You could have the scenario that Matt and I talked about on Lore Watch the one time of the Mongrel Horde as a faction versus the Horde and the Alliance. You could do so many things that would make it a really cool game set in that universe, but doesn't affect the story. And I think that's the problem that people run into when they think about the Warcraft games and World of Warcraft, is that the Warcraft games set the precedent for the story for World of Warcraft, sure, and everybody thinks that the two have to be eternally intertwined. They don't. Like, a really good example is there was a short-lived but very fun DC Universe MOBA. It was not in any way, shape, or form tied to anything on the current storylines in movies, cartoons, or comics, but it was fun, and it dealt with different Elseworld things like, hey, here, play a Starro. Why? I don't know. Play a Starro. It's fun. Didn't do anything for the stories. It just was fun. And you could do the same thing with Warcraft, bringing it back as, bring it back Warcraft 4, but have it be Warcraft 4 Echoes of Time, and just have it be different scenarios or a campaign based off of the Bronze Dragonflight and keeping the timelines together or whatever the case is. And it doesn't have to be canonical to the rest of the story of World of Warcraft. Just make a fun game. They could do it. They should do it. Microsoft, if you're listening, Blizzard, if you're listening, I just gave you free money. Like, just do this thing. I just asked for a copy. Okay. Like,
okay. Liz, do you have anything to say, or do you just going to let Joe?
I think 100% we're going to see another StarCraft game. I think there is no chance that we will not see another StarCraft game. Whether it is
an RTS.
As an RTS. Because I think StarCraft was, from the beginning when Microsoft went to acquire Blizzard, StarCraft has been a game they highlighted in their promo art. It's been very prominent when talking about the acquisition. There is no chance we aren't going to get a new StarCraft game, and I think it's probably going to be an RTS. Of course, also happening today, we heard that Stormgate is going into early access very soon. Stormgate is, of course, the RTS, which is StarCraft with the serial numbers filed off and filed off very lightly. Like,
it's actually
got a magnifying glass, you could probably see it.
It's like StarCraft, but we took the Zerg out and put the demons from Diablo in. That's not a criticism, by the way, but that's just happens to be what they're doing.
It's like, yeah, it's demons, and then you also have Protoss who are not Protoss, but they look a lot like Protoss. They have that same... You're keeping a lot of the aesthetics in there from StarCraft, and it's made by a lot of former StarCraft developers who, of course, left Blizzard when Blizzard decided, why are we developing StarCraft anymore? So, but I think even though you've got some competition made by former StarCraft developers just coming to market soon, I still think there's no way Microsoft ignores StarCraft. We're going to get more StarCraft. I guarantee it. I will not bet money on it because I don't have money to bet, but you have my guarantee. This is going to happen at some point in the not necessarily immediate future, but it's going to happen. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I'll sign on to that one.
Okay. I don't really have anything to say except that I think the Diablo RTS would be great.
I agree.
That would be really rad.
I mean, we've gotten, World of Warcraft is basically the Diabloization of Warcraft. So I'd be interested to see in a Diablo RTS. What do you do? What are the units? Like are the units going to be like a little barbarian? Or are they actually like the characters that we know? We know that the various, the Amazon's got a name is Cassia. Like do they show up as actual individual people? Do we get little videos of like the story of Diablo, the RTS? I don't know. I would like to see it. But that's it for me. I think at this point we're done. So, Joe?
Sure. Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means that this podcast signing community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcast for the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thank you very much, Joe. Again, guys, if you have a question for the podcast, you can email it to us at podcast@blizzardwatch.com, or you can hit up our Discord where we have the Q and podcast questions channel for just about anybody who wants to ask us a question. We like questions, ask us them. And we have the Patreon Q and podcast questions channel where we go to look first for new questions because you guys pay the bills and we love that you do that so we can keep doing that. Thank you all very much. Thanks to Liz and Joe for being here with us. And basically making the show happen, because otherwise it would just be me rambling for an hour and a half, and nobody wants that except the voices in my head. So yeah, thanks you guys very much for being here. This is the Blizzard Watch podcast. Thank you for being here, and we'll be back next week.